Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for tonight's Wave News Extra. I'm Jose Sosaya here in the Wave Now studio, and some pretty pressing questions, getting some answers today. This is the latest update in the investigation as to what caused UPS Flight 2976 to crash back November 4th, killing, as we know, 14 people, and along with some new information from the NTSB, some new photos showing some of the fiery moment that the left engine and left pylon separated from the left wing. The information here doesn't tell us the why, but it does tell us the how and the what. I'm going to start with showing you some of what happened, and we can pause it bit by bit. So what happened? The NTSB says the number one engine and pylon separated from the wing during takeoff. So again, these are brand new photos showing that moment. And as we'll play a little further in to see a sequence of time, you're starting to see a bit of the smoke come out. This is when the fire is about to start, both on the separated engine and at the point where the pylon is attached to the wing. And I'm going to pause that right there. Because of this, the plane only really climbs about 30 feet above the ground, just clearing the blast fence at the end of the runway. What it could not clear, unfortunately, was the roof of a UPS supply chain warehouse, a storage yard, and two more buildings, including a petroleum recycling facility. Here's one vantage point of a passenger's video that showed the moments where that explosion happened in real time, and a bit of the flight path that where you see it could not avoid the supply chain warehouse, the storage yard, and the buildings, including the petroleum recycling facility. Now, according to witnesses interviewed by the NTSB, the takeoff speed appeared to be normal for an MD-11 plane, which it was, but the climb rate was not normal. How it may have happened, quote, fatigue cracks and overstress fractures. Investigators found some parts of the left pylon mounts had weakened because of repeated stress, and that's what caused a, quote, fatigue crack. But investigators found no signs of pre-existing damage. In fact, the NTSB says all required inspections for this part of the plane were actually done. More detailed inspections are still far into the future based on how much this plane had flown. And as for the why, well, the fatigue cracks and overstress fracture had happened. Why that happened, causing the number one engine and pylon to separate from the wing, that is still to be determined. So a lot to break down. And our Wave News reporting team wants to provide as much context as possible based on what this preliminary report has put out there. Some of that is the aircraft's maintenance history. And that's going to be a pretty clear focus of the NTSB's investigation right now, trying to get down to the root cause of the left engine detachment from this flight 2976. The engine pylon and the pylon connect the engine to the wing. That was last inspected in 2021. And our troubleshooters found the plane was not due for another special inspection of those specific parts for thousands of more hours of use. The left pylon had its last general and detailed visual inspection October of 2021. From there, it was on a 72-month maintenance interval, so it was not even due to be checked again until 2027. The NTSB says a 24-month lubrication of the pylon thrust link. So very specific parts, but just bear with me here. The pylon thrust link and the spherical bearings involved were just done on October 18th, so a little over a month ago. That was the plane's last day at UPS's contractor maintenance facility in San Antonio, the company we've mentioned before, ST Engineering. We've reached out to the Singapore-based company about the NTSB's prelim report. We have yet to hear back. And when we do, we'll make sure to let you know on all of Wave News' platforms. But even so, the plane was also scheduled to have a special detailed inspection due at 29,000 cycles. The plane wasn't due yet. It had only gone through those 21,000 cycles. The fatigue and overstress cracks are key because they're directly related to the 1979 crash of an American Airlines flight. It was a DC-10 back then that also had its left engine fall off. The NTSB back then blamed improper maintenance, which introduced cracks into that plane's left pylon support. So a lot to, of course, follow as we continue to see how long and when and what point the NTSB is going to be able to come to those conclusions that they can share in a further report, and we'll share that with you, obviously, in real time. Moving on to some other stories of the day, and we'll circle back to our extensive coverage about the tragedy of the plane crash as well. GE Appliances today announcing some new agreements with U.S. suppliers in 10 states. The biggest investment happening right here, actually, in Kentucky. Today, the company announced $150 million in new contracts for some of its U.S. suppliers. $40 million of that are going to stay at plastic suppliers in Kentucky. It's expected to create about 1,000 jobs at 4 different companies spread out across the Commonwealth: Williamsburg, Lebanon, Greenville, and Frankfort. Keeping suppliers local gives the company the ability to work face-to-face with their partners, and officials involved say this is going to be able to create those partnerships, and now this is going to benefit the Commonwealth as a whole.
When you think about the investment and the impact that it makes on other companies and other employees, it really is energizing for myself. It's energizing for the team because we start to see how much our work matters.
Well, investment in Kentucky ties directly into an announcement back in June. GE Appliances announced it would be creating 800 new jobs by moving washing machine production from China to Louisville. Production of the new appliances is slated to begin right in early 2027. I'll bring you back here in studio really quick. One LMPD officer shot in the middle of the night while on patrol. He's back to the department 18 months after he was shot and slowly but surely getting back into his groove of serving the community. I want to play you some of that older file video. Officer Brandon Haley was shot getting out of his cruiser back in September of 23. It's an event that left him pretty critically hurt. This is some of the graphic body cam video of the incident, and we have that saved in our archives. Officer Haley says that even though it was a traumatic memory for him, he was determined to return to work as an officer. But that meant Haley had a lot of work to do, from originally being incubated, needing to learn how to walk again, to taking care of his mental health too. Haley has since credited his family, the department, and help from the Police Foundation's Officer in Distress Fund for making it easier, 1, to heal, 2, to feel comfortable coming back to the job, but also providing some of that financial support. And when Haley did return earlier this year, he says his first day back as a full officer, every day since then too, it speaks to the support that he has been receiving since the shooting.
Because here's the thing, I wish that we would never need the Officer in Distress Fund again. But the reality is the sacrificial life that they lead, the things that they encounter, that they run towards, they're going to need us. So here's a way to step up, to make a difference, and to get a little something back for your family too. So thank you guys for always having their back and for making it possible for us to support them.
It's still a recovery. It'll never stop. I believe last month had another procedure just for pain. There's not a day that goes by that I don't have pain. But through this process, I've learned that I'm here for the community. That's what I signed up for. That's what I'm going to continue doing. So every day that I go to work, we have the same mission, and that's keep people safe, get the streets safer, and just help any victim, help anyone in need.
The Police Foundation is hoping to raise funds this holiday season for their Officer in Distress Fund, raffling off a brand new 2025 Lincoln, a $40,000 cash prize. Tickets are already on sale at lmpf.org. The drawing is going to take place on January 9th. We'll be right back with much more of tonight's Wave News Extra, including this exclusive sort of breakdown from a UPS pilot having now sort of digested what today's NTSB preliminary report means. So we're going to have that for you on the other side of the break, as well as a sit down here in studio with Wave News troubleshooter Alina Noakes and a new security video from inside a Russell neighborhood bar, and the claims one party says this alleged shooting was an accident, and now Commonwealth's prosecutors saying it was anything but an accident. So we'll have that for you when we do come back from this break on Wave News Extra. All right, everyone, welcome back into Wave News Extra on this Thursday night, November 20th. A bit more to share with you as far as our extended coverage of the UPS plane crash, the deadly tragedy, and now the reaction to the NTSB's preliminary report about some initial findings and conclusions. What we're also hearing from, though, is aviation experts and their respective, takes, that not to veer on speculation, but just to take what the report has meant. And one of them is someone we've talked to here on Wave News, and we've had for our reports. His name's Neville Barrett, a retired Air Force and UPS pilot. He says pilots like him will practice for scenarios where they can lose an engine. The plane can fly with just one engine, but only if, in this case, it's already up in the air, not a takeoff. And per Barrett, he believes the crew on board, the parish, did the best that they could. And so here's part of an extended conversation our Wave News reporter Julie Richardson had with Barrett earlier today.
And the engine just pivoted up, broke everything, and went flying over the top of the wing.
Gotcha.
Okay, so this was a catastrophic problem. This was not your normal engine failure.
Have you ever seen anything like that?
Never.
Never.
I've seen all kinds of odd stuff happen, but different engine problems and whatnot. But this is dramatic. These things are all bolted together. Okay, so you can look at them, and you're literally looking for cracks. Okay, or fretting or fatigue or whatever. But a more detailed inspection that would be entailed later on would be you take it apart and look. Or you take it apart and you do what's called non-destructive testing. So there's a variety of things you can do. You can do magnaflux testing, where you use magnetic fields to look for cracks. You can do just dye penetrant testing, where you put a type of dye on and the dye goes into the cracks. And the visual inspection may have included the dye penetrant inspection. There's a variety of inspections that get done. But what I can guarantee you is that this stuff is so highly regulated, and this is such an important aspect of ongoing maintenance, that all of the inspections are being complied with. And unfortunately, there was fatigue, cracks that occurred that nobody expected, accounted for, or spotted, and it broke.
So you think this is a fluke? You would call it a fluke? Like nobody did anything wrong?
I would really stress that there is no person or problem or procedure that was wrong. This is one of those things that just happened. This was just more fatigue than was expected, and it just happened. And now that it's happened, yes, it was a fluke. What's the appropriate thing to do? Exactly what the FAA and UPS did. You ground the fleet. This is catastrophic. This is unusual. This is not just some simple little, oh, we had a compressor stall and the engine flamed out. This is a big deal. You ground the fleet, you examine the entire fleet, you see if the same problem is elsewhere, and then you fix it. And if obviously if they find an airplane with that problem, it's not going to fly until it's fixed. And more than likely, now this is just my pure speculation, more than likely the FAA is going to require a complete engineering order to be put out to rebuild those parts. And those parts are all going to be replaced with new. Now, this is very expensive and time consuming, and is just my opinion of what's going to happen. Then the follow-on is, okay, if that's true, how expensive is this going to be? Because airplanes are very expensive to maintain, repair, and redesign or re-engineer. They may not be cost-effective to repair the airplanes. That's just my pure speculation. But they've done the appropriate thing. You ground the fleet, you inspect everyone, and you find out what you got. If this was one problem on this one airplane and nothing else anywhere, yeah, this was a fluke and unusual. But I would suspect they're going to find something similar on others.
So our thanks to our Julie Richardson getting that interview. She's going to have a much more focused report for us tonight on Wave News at 11, so we hope you join us then. And of course, we'll continue to follow any of these developments of the NTSB investigation. Comprehensive coverage of the crash so far. You can always find it on all of our platforms, and the tributes to the victims on wave3.com. Staying with some impact news for the Metro, the yearly Ironman 70.3 competition, it's been put on pause for the year 2026. The Louisville Sports Commission says the race originally scheduled for August is not going to happen next year because of all the road construction. Both I-65 and I-71 will combine for months of major disruptions to traffic in and out of the city. The Ironman has gone on through years of natural challenges where they've run into excessive heat, even algae blooms. Traffic, however, is going to be another issue entirely, leaders say. Shutting down River Road for the Ironman would not be practical, they say, when so many drivers, motorists are expected to be taking the surface streets to avoid that construction.
At the end of the day, the transportation cabinet's main responsibility is to be sure that we have clean thoroughfares in the community for the commuters, the people in vehicles, to be able to get to where they are going, and thus will not give permits for recreational activity to close those roads for events like the Ironman Triathlon.
Now, people traveling to other attractions this summer are also going to be affected. 3 bridges being replaced. You're going to have 65 shut down completely for 2 months. And then, of course, you know the widening of I-71 replacing bridges. That's going to go on for over a year. Louisville Tourism is sending some notices to groups with events this summer just to make sure that they're informed of what's going to happen well ahead of time. In some news and updates in this really peculiar story out of Indiana, a woman ends up giving birth in a car moments, though, after she was turned away from a hospital. And we're going to play a bit of this first video here.
My daughter's being kicked out of this hospital and she's in active labor.
So that was someone narrating that particular video. This is from a woman named Mercedes Wells, or this is the account of Leon Wells, but it is video of Mercedes Wells being pushed out of the Franciscan Health Hospital in a wheelchair in Munster after hospital staff told her to come back later. Her family says they told them they couldn't do anything because she was not dilated enough. 8 minutes after she left, the child was born in the car. Wells' sister-in-law talked to reporters about how Mercedes is now doing.
So when I went to the hospital yesterday, when I opened up the door, Mercedes saw me, she just started crying because she feels violated. She feels unheard. She feels dismissed.
In the end, the new mother was apparently able to check into a different hospital. Franciscan Health says they are grateful the woman and her baby are doing well, but they have now opened an internal investigation into this incident. And stories now extending to beyond our particular region, let's say in the wave country from Kentucky and southern Indiana. This is the story of some new details about what might have happened to a Florida teenager who died on a Carnival cruise ship earlier this month, according to a new court filing from the FBI. As we're reading some of the details here, they may be looking at one of her so a new court filing made by the attorney of this teen who perished, her stepmother. The FBI could be looking at one of her minor children, so a step sibling of Anna Kepner. We're going to begin with this background for you from reporter Jesse Kirsch with this update from Miami.
This morning, the mystery deepening around the tragic death of a teenager aboard a cruise ship. 18-year-old Anna Kepner died on the Carnival Horizon ship earlier this month, the case gaining national attention. And now a document tied to some of Kepner's family coming to light. NBC News has obtained a filing from this week by an attorney for the teen's stepmother, Chantel Hudson, in an ongoing unrelated case about Hudson's past marriage. The attorney writing, an extremely sensitive and severe circumstance has arisen, saying that Hudson and her minor children were on the same Caribbean cruise as Kepner. And writing, Hudson has been advised through discussions with FBI investigators and her attorneys that a criminal case may be initiated against one of her minor children. A former police chief for the Miami PD says investigators are likely going through the ship's surveillance cameras, looking for evidence and to help build a timeline of the possible crime.
They're going to be able to isolate the image of this young lady and run that against all their video streams to see where she was and when and with who. And so that's a lot to unpack.
CBS News reports that Kepner's body was found under her bed in her stateroom, according to multiple law enforcement sources. NBC News has reached out to the FBI on the report. The FBI says it's not commenting about an ongoing investigation. Meanwhile, Kepner remembered this morning. The high school senior from Central Florida described in her obituary as a bright, and beautiful soul.
That was Jesse Kirsch's update, and court records have since identified this suspect as a minor in the family. We've learned, though, even more details about who the person is and some legal battles already playing out. So reporter Bob Hazen has some more new developments from today's court hearing.
This hearing was specifically about a child custody case involving Anna's stepmom, but Anna's death is now a major part of it. 18-year-old Anna Kepner's body was found on a Carnival cruise ship during a trip with her family, including her stepmother and step-siblings. And this week, court documents filed in that stepmother's child custody case claim one of those siblings, a 16-year-old stepbrother, is a suspect in her death. Anna had been living in Titusville with her father, his new wife, and the step-siblings. Today, lawyers for that stepmother and the step-siblings' biological father had a virtual conference with the judge in the case. That came after the father filed a motion saying, quote, the 16-year-old's future has been put in jeopardy because of the choices made by his mother. In court, the judge noted the possibility that the 16-year-old could be asked to testify unless he invokes his Fifth Amendment right.
If you are intending to call him, you will need to file a motion with the court prior to the hearing.
Yes, and I'll further discuss that with my client. He may choose not to call the child.
Okay.
The father wants custody of the younger sibling and to address where the 16-year-old is being kept. Records suggest he is not in law enforcement custody, but also not staying with his immediate family. Also today, the lawyer for Anna's stepmom asked the judge to block the release of more information in the case.
Yes, I did file a motion for non-dissemination. The press has been hounding both myself and my client.
The judge will deal with that idea later. The hearing on custody will happen next month.
So Bob Hazen reporting there. We're also waiting on an autopsy report from a local medical examiner in Miami. The office has said today they still have not made a final ruling on the cause and manner of death of Anna Kepner. We have more to share with you tonight on Wave News Extra, including this sit-down conversation with our troubleshooter, Alina Noakes, her initial report, walking us through some pretty interesting, fascinating security video of this double shooting, the arguments being made by the suspect and by Commonwealth's attorneys, and sort of what the next steps are, including resolution for the bar, as it were, because they also had to answer to some questions to the folks who handle liquor license and dispensing those, so to Metro ABC. So we're going to get into that after this particular pause with some commercial breaks. So hope you stay with us. We'll be right back with more Wave News Extra. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for tonight's Wave News Extra. Much more to discuss among all of our original reporting, including all the hard work our Wave News reporter Alina Noakes does. Happy to be joined by Alina here in studio. And so Alina, we're doing something different tonight in that we're going to begin with the report you've prepared for us today. And the background behind the story, as I understand it, is there was a probable cause hearing today. Some of these details you folks may remember, may be familiar with, but this was a double shooting in a bar last month, if you're familiar where this is in the Russell neighborhood. Some arguments that still need to be played out in court, some pretty serious charges. And the key word, if you hear the discussion brought up about double deuces, I think this might bring some memories up for folks. But walk us through, just the setup for the report you're about to play for us.
Yeah, so this was a weekend report, first of all, where a shooting at Double Deuces Sports Bar had gone unreported. It happened just before 3 a.m. There in the Russell neighborhood. No one called police when this happened. I've been able to obtain the video footage from Double Deuces. It was given to me by Metro through a public records request. They blurred a lot of it to protect the identity of those who were uninvolved in this shooting. But we do know that they have made an arrest in this case. That's with Chaz Ross. And Chaz Ross had a hearing today in district court where they were deciding whether or not there was enough probable cause to send his case to a grand jury. A judge did make the decision today that that was the case. And so this video that I'm about to show you is really central to what the Commonwealth's reasoning was for having the case continue. Through a public records request, Wave News obtained this video from inside Double Deuce Sports Bar the night of an unreported shooting. It was blurred by the Metro, but you can still make out a few key moments. Explained by LMPD Detective Caleb Broughton talking about the suspect, Chaz Ross, seen here at the bar.
You see him adjusting his waistband in some way, and then you see everybody in the bar react to what appears to be a gunshot. And then Mr. Ross leaves the bar while other patrons in the bar are pointing at him, as if pointing him out as the one that, shot a gun.
As Ross leaves, you see a member of security walk up to him. They appear to get into a scuffle as Ross continues to try and walk out the door. Eventually, he does. But let's rewind a bit. This moment, when prosecutors say the gun goes off, is the one in question. The video is silent, but you see reactions. Ross appears to jerk his leg. Others jump. A bartender ducks behind the bar, and then several people start to tend to a woman who had been shot at the other end of the bar.
And then you see another female being treated like other patrons putting napkins on her leg where she received a wound to her leg, and then that's when the video ends.
A few weeks ago, at a hearing to get their liquor license unsuspended, we pressed the Double Deuce owner on why police weren't called after the shooting. Double Deuce's attorney suggested to us maybe a shooting never even happened.
I don't think anyone called police because there was no incident. I mean, no one reported any injuries. No one was injured. If a gun went off, there was no indication from the evidence that a gun went off.
Video evidence appears to directly dispute the claims made by the bar, as does Metro ABC's incident report, which says a security guard attempted to tourniquet one of the women's legs. Now, Ross's attorneys argue they can't put a gun in his client's hand, and the shooting was accidental, suggesting provability problems for the assault charges he faces. The Commonwealth says victims with gunshot wounds are proof enough.
Pretty startling video, Alina, and thank you for breaking that down for us piece by piece. I have to say, as far as you referencing that interview with the attorney there at the liquor license hearing, I guess that's for a court and a jury to ultimately decide, whatever this next step is. That these arguments, I'm like, who was going to have a higher burden, a higher threshold to prove what happened based on the video. And of course, we can only see so much because it is blurred, as you explained, to try and protect the others. But walk us through kind of, where we stand on things right now and what you're going to be interested in looking at as this case plays out, because some of it is going to be prosecutors are going to have their time to make their case.
Sure.
It sounds, the defendant will have his case to make. I don't know how much of it also you'll be interested with the bar owner and what they're going to factor into the litigation of all this.
So Metro ABC still has a case ongoing with them outside of the emergency suspension of their liquor license directly after. If you recall from a couple of weeks ago, they had an emergency suspension appeal and they had a hearing for that. They actually managed to settle with Metro ABC. The bar with Metro ABC managed to settle before they had to go any further. So they have to take a couple things into account before they can actually get that liquor license back, including upping some security measures, providing lighting, providing proper training to their security personnel and staff on when is the appropriate time to call police, things of that nature. We already know that this bar was not supposed to have guns inside. There's in our video signage of a sign on the door saying no guns allowed on this premises.
Would you let me know if I can skip ahead to see
That's
if it
the
was
standard
earlier?
for a bar. I'm not sure if it's in this particular clip you're seeing, but it's posted near the door. So this would have been something that patrons of the bar would have known was the case. You're not supposed to bring a gun inside. And that would, of course, be the case for any bar. That's obviously why the emergency suspension order is in place. In terms of Chaz Ross specifically, he's charged with assault, felon in possession of a firearm, because he does have a history dating back. The latest case was 2018 involving a felony possession charge. And his prior charges were drug charges as well. The assault charge is one that was really the one under dispute. There's second degree assault, I believe, 2 counts, both pertaining to the 2 women who were injured. So they're obviously talking, in this case, they're just focusing on those 2 victims who were struck by the bullet and shrapnel after the fact. But intent became a big part of today's conversation in court. His defense attorneys arguing that the prosecution hasn't proved intent. They also say, of course, as I say in my report, that they can't prove that he had a gun in his hand, that he was waving it around. Prosecutors for basically like, that's not necessary. We don't really have to prove that in this case. We can prove that a gun did get inside, that people were struck. And that's what matters here. It was enough ultimately in light of the Commonwealth, most favorable to the Commonwealth. They sent it to a grand jury. That's going to happen in December. I believe it's about mid-December. The grand jury is supposed to take up that case. And that, of course, will be when it gets to the circuit court level. But as far as the role with the bar, that would be their Metro case. I have no idea what it would be in court, like a circuit court situation, what role they'd really have. Obviously, there's people you think that they would probably talk to that night, security being one of them.
Which we did see. I don't know if he was, hired security or the guard, but just at the very least, you see him approach and what seems to be, based on the video evidence, the instance where people reacted to what they thought was the gunshot, and then he sees him walk away, trying to somehow get.
And it's not clear what happens in that moment, obviously from the video, and it's not narrated. We can't hear anything about what exactly happens when he approaches him, other than I can tell you it's about a minute long from when he approaches him until he gets out the door of them kind of getting into this, what looks to be an argument of sorts with each other. It's not quite clear to me what kind of conversation's happening there. He's definitely not stopping. He's just heading towards the door.
I know what we're playing here is just sort of like, just to recap some of those key steps right there.
Those key moments in there. Yeah. So we know that obviously Metro ABC, once they did manage to talk to people who were at the bar the night, security says, as I say in my report, it was a makeshift tourniquet that he applied to one person's leg, that we know from the report. Obviously, the other allegations that were brought up right after the shooting, the day after, when I talked to a councilwoman who had been directly called by one of the victims, is that, she alleges that the victim was given a VIP card. She took that as something to keep her quiet, to keep her from talking. Obviously, we know that it was several hours after the shooting happened that police were notified that it had occurred. The bar, according to the Metro, that detective there said that the bar had already been closed when they went there to check it out. They actually called Metro ABC to come help them with the investigation. So indicating that at least at that point, no one had planned to call the cops from the bar. Not until the victim showed up at the hospital was that ever reported. So leaves a lot of questions, obviously, especially in light of the statements from a prior report that the attorney for the bar had said to me when I was asking at the emergency suspension hearing. kept trying to keep it focused, the questions on that particular instance, the violation of having a gun at a bar property. That's what he kept trying to focus on. At that point, we hadn't heard from any attorneys, anybody with the bar about what had happened that night. That was kind of my opportunity to ask. So we did. And in this case, they insist that, no one reported any injuries. There was no indication that anybody was injured. They talk about there being no flash, no blood on the ground, things of that nature, that the two victims continued to have a good time at the bar. That is unclear from the video that we have that I'm showing you. I don't know what happened after, I think it's about 3 a.m. after the video cuts off. I don't know what happens after the fact. But those are the allegations. But clearly from the claims but clearly from the video, you can see there was a response. There was a reaction from patrons there.
A bit of a group gathering at the bar.
Group gathering. Someone brought a chair out for one of the victims. Someone was putting napkins on a leg of a victim. You have things like that are happening that very clearly indicate, including a security guard going up to the person who
has been accused at this point.
Now accused of firing the gun at the time, but obviously they've identified him at this point as the alleged suspect in this case. But you do see a reaction, you see a response. There is a knowing that something happened and someone got hurt, and the pop and the reaction all verifies the opposite of the claims being made by the attorney.
I totally get you in saying, like, if I could bring back, there was a point in this video, and I'd see if I could scrub to it and just get to it a little, because we can edit this kind of stuff in real time, but just so you all, what I was going to bring up to Alina is this part right here, and then see if I could switch to it, try and pause it. Again, we're just looking at the evidence. There may be more that will be discussed in court.
Certainly, yeah.
But to say, for someone behind the bar to react that way doesn't feel like they wouldn't just shudder and shiver for no good reason. Perhaps like there's got to be some noise that would make you respond that way. So again, perhaps that would help bolster prosecution's case for the Commonwealth. And then if we keep the video playing here, I think, it's not the clearest image ever.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell from that particular angle.
But to say that there's not also movement to feel like there's a reason why people are congregating here, and we can't necessarily make out who in this image is the one who was hurt. Like, that's not something made evident by the video. But to say that, we do know that 2 women ultimately were confirmed to have been hurt in some way, shape, or form.
And we do know that the one that they're tending to right there is one of the victims.
Yeah.
So, several things that obviously are bound to be brought up that were obviously the focus of today's hearing, and enough for the judge to consider probable cause to send it to a grand jury. What they do with this information, what they do in making a decision, is up to them. What level, if they find that it reaches assault, that sort of thing would be up to a grand jury as well. But this is again video that we received. You can kind of see what happens inside, and it seems to give us some clarification on what happened inside that night that we didn't prior have to today. So.
Oh, I appreciate you digging into that, Alina. Just for anyone who might be watching in their curiosity, and just for their own refreshing their memory, as far as Double Deuce is concerned, what is their status? Are they still open for business as usual?
No, they have to, as far as I'm aware, they're not open just yet, but they have to, that's just because they have to complete certain things before they can. So of those, putting a street light out in front of the business, as well as training their security properly, adding the metal detectors at the front entrance. Sorry, going off memory from a couple weeks ago. Things like that they're supposed to enact before they can start operating with a liquor license again.
That is the precondition, or the precondition.
With a liquor license, yes. And so that's something that was the agreed upon with the settlement with the Metro that they have to do first. And one of the points, just to briefly say, because I forgot to, the questions about whether security checked the suspect is still a question, because that was something that the prosecutors kind of suggested maybe didn't happen based off the video that they could see. While the bar owners say that he was checked at the door, that they did pat him down, and it's basically, I was told it happens sometimes, like things happen, and that's by the bar owners. So things like that was a question, and likely will probably be a question as this continues, and clearly was a part, at least, of the Metro's thinking in adding increased security to the bar and the measures checking people before they go inside.
Okay. Well, certainly as the timeline plays out, assuming, we'll be there in the courtroom for whatever those official discussions are under oath.
Sure.
And I was, before we wrap up, Alina, just so folks understand, like, this is the kind of work, you do day in and day out, and just, kind of following these stories. And it doesn't have to always be, very important issues, but just for any reason that they may want to reach out to you just for that direct communication, for story ideas or way to get a hold of you for these kinds of, the stories that are making a difference in our community. If you just want to let folks know those handles that they can reach out to you. It's funny now that I think about it, it's like, just not teeing you guys up to say that before you step out of the studio, just to know for people where they can reach out to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I wasn't expecting that. Really, I have social media, obviously Instagram and Facebook as well. Twitter, less used by me, but you can also, best way I would always say, for story ideas and things you want me to look into is just email. My email is Alina, ALENA.Noakes at wave3.com. Of course, you can also email our direct newsroom that is on our website, the Contact About Us tab. It's a maze to get there, but you can get there, and that's the best way.
Whatever the best way is, or whatever the easiest way for you all is to get a hold of us.
And the Troubleshooters tip line makes it easier if you just click on the Troubleshooters tab at the top of the website. That way you forego any other things. You just enter your information and your story into that, and it goes directly to our troubleshooter team. So I would say go with that. That's the easiest way.
The focused investigation for the troubleshooters.
Yes. Yeah. Make sure it gets to me. Yeah.
All right. Alina Noakes. Alina, thank you so much for being here in studio. We're going to take this quick break to be right back with much more of tonight's Wave Extra. Don't go away. Hi, everybody. We appreciate you staying with us for tonight's Wave News Extra, and appreciate Alina Noakes spending some time breaking down her recent troubleshooters investigation, and certainly whatever chapters are next in the court cases litigation that's going to follow with what happened at the Double Deuce. We're going to round things out with a couple of these stories tonight. One of them is learning about a free program for kids here in Louisville. It's expanding its reach and opening literal new doors. For more than 10 years, AMT has been working to connect people and lift them up through music and technology education. Wave News reporter Marissa Burke shows us how their brand new building is going to help those who call West Louisville home and beyond, of course, but for them to excel.
From a rendering to reality, AMP started as a nonprofit with the CEO and founder's son's love of music, but has continued to grow in the West Louisville community with its new building on West Market Street.
The CEO and founder, Dave Christopher Sr., has turned his dream into reality. On Thursday, he celebrated a milestone not just for him, but for the West Louisville community. The new AMP Technology and Learning Center is 3 stories high with meeting rooms, classrooms, and offices. It will also house the first permanent location for Melanair Marketplace, a small boutique for Black-owned vendors to sell their products. Christopher says the building's ability to serve different needs is what makes it an investment in the people who live here.
There's so many things that I could say about what happens in this building, but I don't even know all the things that are going to happen in this building because it's just that important. It's just that magical, if you will. The thing, like somebody, even when she talked about her kids walking through the door, right? And them. So in that moment, what they thought of is this for us? You know what I mean? Like they now know that this is what they deserve and this is what they can have. And we want to continue to create excellence for them so that they believe that they have the value, that they're worthy of these things. I tell people we don't want just enough. I want it all.
I asked the CEO and founder what he's excited to do, and he's excited to really hit the ground running, but he's also going to be able to double the amount of kids that AMP can help. Marissa Burke, Wave News.
Thanks to Marissa for that report. And some consumer and let's call it tech news, but for those of us who will order out sometimes on our smartphones, many of you use this to get lunch or dinner delivered, but now one same-day delivery service has a recent alert out for a data breach, and you're going to see by the brand name as soon as we pull it up here. DoorDash says some personal customer information and of Dashers even, it was stolen. It was an issue they traced to an employee falling victim to a scam. So the data accessed in the scam included full names, phone numbers, email addresses, and even some physical home addresses. However, the company says nobody's social security numbers, ID numbers, driver's license info, or even financial account information were taken. But there's no word on how many people were overall affected by the breach. DoorDash said it is investigating and has reached out to police. So certainly want to be mindful of the ways that you could protect your money. Speaking of ways where you're trying to budget things out as far ahead of time as possible for next week, Thanksgiving included, for knowing what you can afford to bring to the dinner or what you're preparing at home. Then after that is Black Friday. Now a little over a week away. The National Retail Federation is forecasting the first $1 trillion spending holiday season ahead. However, consumers may not get all the bang for the bucks that they're used to. Reporter Karen Kefa explains what consumers should know about this year's deals and some sneaky surprises.
Popular holiday gifts like toys, apparel, and electronics are among the most imported and most impacted by the Trump administration's tariffs.
The uncomfortable reality of it all is that the sort of things that we want this Christmas or in past Christmases is stuff that is no longer produced in the United States.
Russell Hawley, director of shopping content for CNET, says some tech and toy manufacturers have made changes to trim their costs.
There have been a number of manufacturers that have made it clear that they're going to, in order to adjust to tariffs, do things like remove batteries. So the batteries would need to be a separate purchase. The packaging may be different.
Purchasing items brought in before tariffs took effect may help consumers save, but Hawley says do some research, especially with tech, to make sure it's worth it.
We've seen quite an increase in people shopping, refurbished versions of models of things that they are interested in order to get that, kind of extra savings. My biggest recommendation to anybody going that route is to just read the fine details.
David Bieri, associate professor of economics at Virginia Tech, says online shoppers who find big deals need to note where the item ships from.
If you're doing direct imports or have FedEx or DHL or UPS or even the US Postal Service act as your importer, you will have to carry the cost.
The de minimis rule had long kept low-value packages entering the U.S. tariff-free. That exemption ended in August. In Washington, I'm Karen Kefa.
Certainly something to keep in mind. We're going to wrap things up tonight as we look at some very interesting stories across the Commonwealth and very much a subject matter that you weren't expecting we would finish this stream with here on Wave News Extra. So I'll ask you folks, and you're free to leave a comment if you're joining us through the socials. But when you think about a cockroach, we usually think about how gross they are. It's the last thing you'd ever want to see as you step into any room that you're going to spend some time in. What scientists say we don't think about very often, though, is the allergens that they produce. And those allergens that cockroaches produce can trigger things like asthma, especially in children. That's why reporter Mariah Congetto gives us a look at a new study being led by scientists at the University of Kentucky. They're looking and working to develop a complete approach to cockroach control and a specific emphasis on the risks for those trying to find affordable housing. And so here is Mariah's report.
It's a pretty widespread problem that kind of has gone under the radar.
Everything a cockroach does, like scurry place to place, defecate, or even when it dies, allergens are released.
And they can cause asthma exacerbation. They can send people to the hospital, make them need medication.
In fact, Zachary DeVries, an associate professor of entomology at UK, says there are more than 10 identified allergens in cockroaches.
We really wanted to find a better way of not just managing them, but making management sustainable.
DeVries says children are disproportionately affected by this.
A lot of people end up living with these roaches for years and years and just being constantly exposed to them and their allergens.
DeVries says their study looks at German cockroaches. They're the small ones that only live indoors with people. They eat your food, drink your water, and their only predator is you.
This species can get to numbers that are really, really high, hundreds to thousands of these roaches packed into a really small kitchen or home.
DeVries says this study has 3 objectives: identify why treatment efforts to eradicate them fail, find better strategies people can use to keep their homes roach-free long-term, and home intervention.
One of the areas we see them kind of spreading a lot, though, is within low-income or affordable housing communities.
DeVries says these are often areas where pest control is lacking or not up to expected standards.
When we go to housing communities, we're getting 25, 30% of homes are there that have infestation.
The study will last through March 2028. It's being funded by a nearly $1 million agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
We're going to help people in Kentucky, but UK is going to kind of lead the way on dealing with this across the world, which is really exciting for us.
Mariah Congito, WKYT.
For those of you who stuck around to watch all that video of the different cockroaches as the samples, you were troopers. So thank you for that. By the way, if you're looking for someone who would want to participate to help, at least for the scientific purposes of the study, the team at UK is looking for your information and perhaps your ability to help them out. A reminder for every kind of story, not just the gross bug-related ones, but just for anything happening in our community. Of course, you see the big story of the day, the NTSB releasing these pictures and its preliminary report about the deadly UPS plane crash, and so much more updated on our homepage, wave3.com. And as these updates come in, we do send you these push alerts to your phone if you download the Wave News app, the Wave Weather app. Always a great way to stay connected with what we're able to share with you in our community. Make sure to join us tonight for Wave News at 11, as we'll have a breakdown on original reporting from our Julia Richardson, our Meredith Lee, looking ahead to what'll be, the rain-driven discussion with Chief Meteorologist Kevin Harned, and already looking ahead to how perhaps this full Thanksgiving week is going to play out. So certainly something we're looking forward to breaking down for you as we prepare for the holiday and beyond. Always appreciate your time, folks. I'm Jose Sosaya here in the Wave Now studio. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.